One of the things that I hear in society, not a lot of people talk about, especially online, is that you have a lot of millennials and Gen Z that's encountering a lot of these health problems, and that it's expected that more of millennials and Gen Z is going to die at a faster rate, even up to 2030 and above, because of lack of healthcare, inflation, and just not really taking care of themselves when they should. One of the things that I started to notice when I was doing some research about millennials and Gen Z was just this onset increase of colon cancer. And that's plagued by a lot of these diets that, we tend to eat, such as processed foods or drinking sugary drinks on a daily basis. And one of the things that I also notice is that the reason for that, and usually I notice it a lot, is because we usually go to fast food as a convenience, especially if we work in a company 8 hours a day. And, the first thought is we don't really bring our home cooked meals to work. We usually don't cook. We usually are satisfied on getting things from Uber Eats, Seamless, or whatever apps that's out there that's talking about quick food delivery, instead of actually cooking our own meals and make sure we take it to work. And even to the process, which I used to do and I'm still doing to this day, of making our own soft drinks that's healthier and filled with the type of stuff that you like, and remembering not to use things like white sugar and processed sugar in order to make those drinks. Especially, I would warn so-called African Americans to not keep drinking Kool-Aid or have those ones where it's a lot of loaded sugar that you put from the powder into a pitcher and you make juice out of it. Really do got to move smarter, but I'm not one to say to anyone that you have to automatically go on crazy ass diets like a keto diet, or go on a Dr. Sebi alkaline diet, even though part of me would recommend it. I will say this: at the end of the day, it is very important that there should be national coverage on the problems millennials and Generation Z is facing, because we are the generation that should be paid attention to. We're the youngest. So the idea about all these different things that's going on is that you don't want to live in a world where the youngest generation is dying at a faster rate than the older generation. And, inflation being the problem with this, poverty, and not being able to afford the life of luxury or life of simplistic living, because of the fact of the matter, rent is a problem, especially if you live in these big cities. And, obviously everybody's dream is to be able to live in peace, whether you live in a house or whether you have your own. So there's this article I want to introduce you to that I want to tell you about today, in which it's one of these sort of things we need to bring to the attention of everyone. And that is colorectal cancer is rising among Gen X, Y, and Z. Here are 5 ways to protect yourself. Shout outs to Allison. If you think you're too young to get colorectal cancer, consider this. About 20,000 people in the US under the age of 50 will be diagnosed this year, and an estimated 3,750 young adults will die. Colorectal cancer is rapidly shifting to diagnose at a younger age, conclude the authors of an American Cancer Society report released this month. Since the mid-90s, cases among people under 50 have increased by about 50%. It's one of the deadliest cancers in this age group. The moment that I was diagnosed with colorectal cancer scared me out of my mind, says Shauna Brown, a union organizer in Stockton, California. She was in her late 40s at the time and was completely shocked. I had no signs or symptoms, she says. Brown had received a screening test kit in the mail from her healthcare provider, but she didn't think it was urgent, and frankly, it grossed her out. The test required her to take a stool sample and send it back. It didn't seem sanitary, Brown recalls thinking, so I ignored the test. At the time, many people were unaware that in 2018, the American Cancer Society had lowered the recommended age to begin screening from 50 down to 45 years old. Eventually, during the routine medical appointment, Brown's nurse practitioner at Kaiser Permanente persuaded her to complete the screening, known as a FIT test, which can detect trace levels of blood in the stool. It came back positive. So Brown had a colonoscopy, and doctors found a cancerous polyp. Then she had surgery to cut out a small part of her colon. Fortunately, the cancer had not spread beyond that. She's now an advocate for screening. It definitely saved my life, Brown says. 2 years later, she remains cancer-free. Millennials and Gen Z are at risk too. Diet may play a role. Statistically, people in their 20s and 30s are much less likely to get colorectal cancer compared to people 50 and older, but cases in this age group are rising. They're expected to increase by 90% by 2030, says Dr. Kimmy Ng, who directs the Young Onset Colorectal Cancer Center at Dana-Farber Cancer Center. Ng says researchers are evaluating a range of factors that could be fueling the rise in colon cancer, everything from a lack of vitamin D, the complicated role of the microbiome, to the effect of high red meat consumption and the role of diet overall. A study published in 2021 found that women who drank more than 2 sugary drinks per day had more than double the risk of early onset colorectal cancer compared to women who drank less than 1 drink. And a study published this month suggests people who eat lots of fresh and minimally processed foods are less likely to develop colon cancer compared to people who consume lots of ultra-processed foods, including processed meats, sweets, carbonated soft drinks, and ready-to-eat meals. And a healthy diet likely plays a role in preventing recurrences among people who are diagnosed with colorectal cancer. A study published in 2019 found researchers tracked about 1,000 patients who had been treated for stage 3 colon cancer. They found people who consumed a lot of foods that can spike insulin, such as white bread, sugar-sweetened drinks, and processed snacks, were about twice as likely to have a recurrence or die from colon cancer compared to those who consumed the least of these foods. A wake-up call at 35. When DeAndre Williams of Covington, Georgia, first saw blood in his stool, he figured he had hemorrhoids. So he put off seeing a doctor. At the time, he felt fine and weighed 240 pounds. I was solid, Williams says. I thought I was healthy because I worked out consistently. But at 35, he had colorectal cancer. After he was diagnosed, Williams had surgery and spent months recovering. Now, he's back coaching football, speaking at community events about the importance of colorectal screening. And he's made a big change in his diet. I don't eat a lot of processed foods anymore, he says. He says, looking back, he suspects his diet may have played a role. Growing up, his dad was a truck driver, and his family didn't take time to prepare meals at home. Everything was grab and go, he explains. Prepared and processed foods were convenient. But now, he eats more fresh produce and less bacon, sausage, and snack foods. He also avoids sugar and sodas. The good news is that colorectal cancer is very treatable when caught early. So, what can you do to protect yourself? Here are 5 strategies to guide you. 1, know the signs and symptoms. Some of the early symptoms of colorectal cancer can include blood in your stool, a change in bowel habits, weight loss for no reason, a feeling of bloating and fullness and fatigue. If you experience any of these symptoms, you should talk to your doctor about getting screened. I'm not going to really read the quotes from Ng, but let's continue on. 2, don't let 45 pass you by. Everyone 45 and older should be screened for colorectal cancer. If your healthcare provider sends a stool sample test in the mail, don't ignore it. And if you're younger, your doctor may recommend earlier screening if you have a family history of colorectal cancer or polyps. 3, talk to your family about cancer history. Ask your parents and siblings if they've ever had polyps or have been diagnosed with colorectal cancer. First-degree relatives of people who've been diagnosed with colorectal cancer should start screening 10 years earlier than the age the family member was diagnosed, and explains. So if your father was diagnosed with colorectal cancer at age 45, you should be screened at age 35. Talk to your healthcare provider if you have a family history. 4, choose your screening option. You don't necessarily have to get the dreaded colonoscopy. There are several other effective screening options. It's never been easier to get the screening done, says TR11. Screening methods include colonoscopy, sigmoidoscopy, or stool-based tests, typically taken at home or mailed back to the lab. So these are some of the things that we should be aware of when it comes to the whole entire thing about one of the plagues that's plaguing generation millennials and Z. So make sure you understand that, spread the news to everybody. If you like what you hear, remember to like, share, subscribe. Peace.